about the book and about, it's our chance to speak about October 7th, and it's our opportunity also to process this day. And I think this book, I didn't know it at the beginning when I just started working on it, but it's some kind of, in Hebrew, a lot of people use the word ripui, like it heals something. And I can say it like first person, that when I started writing this book, I was a mess. And when I finished, I'm much stronger now. I think I gained a lot of resilience from doing this. And it's something that really came as a surprise, because I'm going to tell you at the beginning just how it all started. And then we're going to read some stories, and I'll give it a frame that I want. Actually, I want to give you lead you or give you a message. When Yair hears me, Yair is my co-author, when he hears me say it, he says, don't say message, say present. You're giving them a present, but it's a message from one of the heroes, that if we just open the book right now and read it, I don't think we'll gain anything, because it's such a common, known, and even banal message that we all met it on like magnets on refrigerators. Then we could probably miss it if we just read it from without the context. But I think if we have the whole process, if we walk through this whole hour, maybe we will get to this message when we're ready to hear it and to internalize it. And this is my prayer, because I think this message is really important. You'll also, I think, agree with me. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the book and the circumstances that led us. You know about the circumstances, of course, but why did we decide to write this one? And then I'll read to you some parts of the stories, and you can also feel free to ask questions like in the middle or in the end or whatever, okay? So I wrote a book 4 years ago. I wrote it before, but it came out 4 years ago. It's called in Hebrew, Mat Mevakeshet, Sefer al Ahava Veguf. It's just been translated into English, and in English we call it, actually it's about love, a book about, no, it's like, sorry, I have to remember. Actually, it's about love, a Jewish perspective about modesty and sexuality. And it's, in Hebrew, it really made a lot of, I don't know, I can call it buzz, but I want also to call it noise. I don't know, in Hebrew we say it's asar bera'ash. How do you say it in English?
Yeah,
like, what?
Noise, that's fine.
Say that, yeah.
Noise? Because some of the rabbis that read it wanted to throw it to the garbage. And that's also what they told their students. And some of them said it's the most important book, and they gave it to their students, and they study it with them. And it really, I think tens of thousands of people in Israel read it already. And my first one, I'm just giving you a promo because it's going to be translated into English right now, just today, actually.
Karen?
What?
Was it by Karen?
Yeah, by Magid. And that's why I made really warm connection with a publishing house, with Magid Koren. You know, Magid is a part of Koren. Mm-hmm. And they offered me to become the chief editor in Hebrew because of our warm, because the relationship that we had. And so that's what I'm doing for the last 2.5 years. I'm the chief editor in Hebrew of Magid. And this is why I was in the spot when this book was, because I don't know if it was born. He was conceived like when I was there, and I wasn't supposed to write it. How do you say hashgacha in English?
Divine providence.
Divine
providence.
Providence. Because I feel that me writing this book is a really providence, but Yair he's an atheist, so he says, okay, that's her narrative. It's just my luck, because he was also in a really big depression when I offered him to write this book, and then it really helped him get out of the depression. So at the beginning, I wasn't supposed to write this book. What happened is that Rabbi Reuven Ziegler, he's my manager. I live in Alon Shvut. It's a religious settlement. We didn't really hear anything. We just knew.
We knew right away.
No. We knew that something's going on, and everyone was driving with their madim outside, and we knew that there was maybe we didn't hear the word war, even though it was, I didn't hear it. Okay, we live in exactly at the beginning of the entrance of the settlement, and we just saw the cars, and then we opened the table.
We also heard the booms.
Yeah, so we didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
We didn't hear anything. We had one siren. We just knew that we heard that something really bad is going on in the south, but the numbers were 21 people died.
Right.
Like that was, and I cried when I heard it because it's terrible. But it took me, like, we didn't know, and that actually, today I know that this Shabbat, I remember Shabbat and holiday actually, I feel that Shabbat kept me like in the most not in a good manner. Like it kept me from knowing what's going on with my brothers and sisters.
That's one of the stories in the book.
What?
That's one of the stories in the book. The ambulance driver who
Right.
didn't turn on the radio.
Nachon.
And he said it because it was Shabbat.
Nachon, and they said that saved them because if they would have heard,
they would have
been we're not going there. So, but I feel that it's that like the gap between what I felt a little bit patriotic. I started giving all the cars that went out of the yeshiva. We gave them food and soaps, not for eating, but for we knew that there was something going on, and I felt good. And then in Motzash, I realized that also in Motzash, no one spoke about 1,200 people. It was, I think,
Took 2 or 3 days.
Yeah,
they didn't know yet.
So it took me a few days, and then I collapsed. Like I don't know. My children are pretty old. My younger one is 11, so I felt like I don't really have to function as a mother and stuff. So I could like collapse to my bed. So I was in bed and I was crying, and I gained a lot of escapism hours. I watched Greg's Anatomy. You know this? Grey's Anatomy. It has 20 seasons, right? Yeah. So I watched half of it in a month. You can just realize how much escapism I had. And then he called me, Reuven, and he told me that half of the publishing house is being already enlisted and they're in the army, and it's him because he's older, and all the women. And now, whoever left in Koren, we're enlisting to the army of the spirit, like Tzva HaRuach. How would you say it in English? Spiritual, yeah, the army of the Israeli spirit or something like that, and we need to give the Israeli people something that will help them go through this tough times. And he came with the idea that maybe we should like write a book of stories about those heroes. You remember that from the beginning those stories came out, like from the day I think 9th October we already started hearing about heroes. If you just open TV, I didn't open the TV, but my husband did, and I saw heroes everywhere. And I told him, okay, listen, I told him 3 things. First of all, this is an amazing idea. Thank you so much, because I'm only crying, and now it's the first time I'm smiling in a week. And second, I think the one should be right. He didn't want me to write it because I'm not coming from literature. My last book is So I told him, okay, this is a really good idea, but who should write this is Yair Agmon. You know Yair Agmon? You've heard of him? This is his 7th book already, and he's also a filmmaker, mostly documentary filmmaker, and I think everything he does, I didn't know him personally, but everything he does, he knows how to really, first of all, he's very sensitive and very good-hearted, but he knows how to speak to someone and to bring up his most, like, it's like he can bring someone to tell you his story in the most authentic way, and it really touches. He knows how to touch hearts, and also his genre of writing, he calls it documentary prose, which means I'm going to tell you in my books, like his last books, I'm going to tell you true stories, but I'm going to write that's not how he describes it, but I can tell you because I read some of his books. But I'll do it, I'm telling you the true stories, but I'll do it in the most, it's like the highest literature way, okay? You You can analyze it literally, and it'll be. It really he writes really good. So I said this must be a Ragman. That was the second thing I told Ruben, and the third thing is I told him, okay, but I don't want to be involved at all. I don't want to be in touch with this book. I'm just gonna manage it from above. If you open up a WhatsApp group for this book, I don't want to be in it. I don't want to touch this material. I can't deal with it. It's too hard for me. And he said, okay. And then I called Yair. And I asked him to write this book. And he refused 3 times. And then I heard it only after the book came out. We gave a lecture together. And then he told his side. I didn't know it, but I'll tell you because it's important for us, I think.
How far into after October 7 was this?
Yeah, so he started writing this, I think, like 3 weeks after October 7th, and then I joined him. He asked me to join him a month later. So
you knew about Heroes already?
Yeah.
Heroes
yeah.
Weekend.
Yeah, we asked the beginning. I'll just say I'll tell his side of the story, and then I'll tell you how it started. He lives in Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv became like, it was 3 weeks of being in the shelter all day and all night because they were bombed. So he was in the shelter with his children, and his sister lives in the Otef. And on October 7th, he says something like that. He says, we hear sirens, we go into the shelter, and then he told us when he spoke about it, he said 2 years before October 7th, he started working on a documentary movie, I think, that it's not going to be at October 7th. It was like decided that it's not going to be ever broadcast because this project was about the Israeli-Palestine conflict. So he was working on it, and people told him like 2 years before that if he really wants to be like in the business, so he should be in the Telegram channel of Hamas. Should join the Telegram. Subscribe. Exactly. So you can imagine what he gets into his palm at the very morning of October 7th. He said, I saw videos that I would never be able to forget, even though I really want. And as opposed to me, and I think also as opposed to you, he said that the first video he saw wasn't in the news at all. It was just from viral things from Hamas, okay? The first video he saw, and he doesn't want to tell me what it was, he knew. He said it in Hebrew, Ma she'aya u'lo ma she'yeh. Like, it's never going to be the same again. This is the breaking point. It's going to be before and after this day is the breaking point. And he's a really sensitive person and fragile one. And he collapsed and also became much more depressed than I do. And when I called him, he just said, I can't do it. I can't interview anyone. I can't write anything. I can't do anything. And then he didn't really say that. He just said, it doesn't fit me. I don't want to do it. And then I continued bothering him about it. So he told himself, okay, so I really want to refuse, but I don't want to diminish her motivation. So I'm just going to ask for, put some terms that they're not going to be able to give to provide, to accept. So he said, okay, you want 40 stories. I'm not going to be able to interview anyone. So just find me interviewers and people that'll make it into transcripts, because I'm going to work with the words, not with it. And also researchers that should bring us all the stories, and someone to fund all of this, because it's like he built a team of 10 people. And I came to Reuven and I told him, listen, Yair says that it needs to be like this, and this. I think it's going to cost like this, and that. And Reuven says, I don't think this is a matter of how much it's cost or how much we gain from it. This is our obligation to the mamash. He's so ideological. Mamash is such an amazing person. And
how
he said,
were you funding it?
What?
How
I don't know how, but no one funded it. It's like our Osa'a, the publishing house, they funded it. Usually we find donors, but no one did. No one found so it was the publish, and he told me it would probably not be profitable, but this is our duty. And that was so really amazing. I mean, I feel proud working
Yes.
Really, in a place that this is what I hear from my manager. It's amazing. And I told him, amazing. And then I called Yair and I told him, you got it. And then he says, he did like that because he didn't want to get yes. But then he said, okay, you know what? Let's do one story. So he sent his friend, which later became our interviewer because he's very, very good. He sent his friend to interview one of the heroes that is called Ofek Livni. Ofek Livni, in Hebrew, Ofek is like his horizon. And when I met this guy, I never met him before. Only after the book came out, I met this guy. And I looked at him, I spoke to him, and he's like sun, like a horizon, like a, I don't know, bright horizon. It's amazing to talk to him. He's young, he's 27 or something. And he was at the Mesiba, at the Nova Festival, like all of the young people there. And he just took his car and rescued 10 people. Under fire, much under fire. And he says that at one point, it was only 8 people. Only 8 people in a private car. But at one point, he saw 2 people running. And he stopped the car and said, I have place in my bagage, in my trunk. So he opened the trunk and took out his bags and threw them out, and they never came back to him. And Yair says that this is not such it's not such an easy thing to do. So it really impressed him because Yair wants us to find the little things that makes the story. So he said, I started working on this interview. I got the transcript and I started working on it at night. I put a box of tissues and I knew I was going to have one hellish of a night. And then I started working on it and I felt like I'm becoming taller and I can finally breathe again. And then he called me in the morning. He sent me the story and he said, I'm doing this. And I read the story and I started crying a lot. But I felt, for the first time, I felt something, really, I'm telling you, I felt something that I didn't have words for. But then one of the readers of the book, after the book came out, one of the readers gave me the words. She said, when I read this book, for the first time, from October 7th, this is the first time I cry tears that don't empty me, but fulfill me. It's such a strong, because I'm telling you, personally, really, I don't like to cry. I don't like crying. I don't like feeling pain. It's not something that I like, okay? And at the first time, I think, maybe I'm 41, so first time of 41 years, I think I read stories that I'm crying through reading it. And it's sad, but it gives me strength and it fills me up. It's really amazing. I can speak about it for 2 hours, but I'll give you a break. So about how we we're going to start reading Odmat, but how did we got to the heroes? So we had 2 researchers. One had to find the stories in the media. It's not like we didn't want to find stories out of nowhere. It doesn't matter. It could be in the media. And the other one had to find their number. So the one who was on the media, after 2 days, he gave us an Excel page with 250 stories with links after 2 days of working. And we told him, okay, stop. And he said, oh, and that's only from 2 channels. I didn't even go through the all other 4 channels. So I think that if someone would do that today, he would find, I don't know, 8,000? I don't know how much, but he will find a lot of heroes. And of course, there are a lot of heroes that we will never be able to know about them because they took their story with them to the Olam Haba. So after 250 people, we told them, okay, stop. Now we're going to start building, finding the stories for the book. Every story was good. We never said this is not good enough because all the stories were amazing. Our criteria was only one. We wanted diversity. We wanted to represent the Israeli society. It should be men, women, religious, non-religious, also non-Jewish. Arabs, we have some Arabs, and we have foreign worker also. A Druze woman, yeah. They're amazing. You know, one of the Arabs, there's a Bedouin that's called Yosef El Ziadna, and he is a relative of those Chatufim,
The one that they found the bodies.
that they found their bodies, and he tells about them in the story. I thought maybe the way he speaks, I don't know, he has such a simple charisma of a simple man who says, you should really read his story. I'm not gonna ruin it with but he speaks also about his relatives that were kidnapped, and he says that the older one that was found, he's also called Yosef Elziadna. He had diabetes, and his son had migraines from when he was a child and used medicines, and it didn't bother Hamas to kidnap them into a tunnel and then eventually kill them. So that was
the son was released earler.
No,
two of them
son
were.
and daughter were released.
Yeah.
In one of the exchanges, but there's another son and the father that they found.
Yeah.
Ironically, they were on the list of who was going to be released of the ones that are alive, but from the remains that they found, they've been gone for a while.
Yeah, which is not surprising. Yeah. So we started calling them, whoever was available and able to speak, because some of them said, I'm not in a mood at all to speak, got into the book. There was not even one that we told, okay, beautiful story, you're not going to be in the book. Everyone that were interviewed, got into the book. So now, what I want to do, first I want to read to you, I don't think we have a lot of opportunities in our lives to sit back and listen to a story, like story time. It's not for our age, right? But at the beginning, when I started speaking about this book, I gave I photocopied the pages and I gave the text, and then I realized it's not good, because people, when you sit with the text, you're like, it's like you have a wall between you and me and the story, and if you just listen, it does something to you. So I'm not going to give you the text. I'm going to read it. I'll try to read it as dramatically as I can, and you'll feel. I think it's also. I'm glad that this group is not so big, but also not so small, because it's like I'd like to think of us right now, from the moment I'm starting to read this, as it's like a tribe that sits around a fire. And the chief tells the story. I'm not the chief, but those heroes are. They have something to tell us. I'm just gonna read it through their voices. And also these stories, they're being told. Someone told me after my lecture, he says, when I read this book, it was one thing. And then when I heard you and Yair read it, I realized what you did in this book. You didn't write text. You wrote, how do you say? You wrote speech. It's like writing speech. It's really, you'll feel it, okay? So the first thing I'm going to read to you. Yeah, sure.
First of all, I read the book and read it a few times, stories a few times, and just incredible.
Wow.
Like you said,
you're a hero for reading it once and then a few times, really.
But who made the decision, or why was the decision made not to put any photos in? Because I had to.
Right.
Any
what?
Photos.
Because I went looking on the internet for who these people are.
Oh, right.
And I just feel
we
like
really,
that's chaser.
Right. We had we thought about it a lot, and then we realized two things. First of all, if you put photo, it might
Takes away.
What?
Takes away from the story.
Right. Photo is a visual event. And we really want this book to be only about words, and not even written words, but spoken words. It really should be specific. And when you see a picture, it takes you away from the words. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that we didn't want people to think that this is a memorial book of, the people who died, and this is their picture. We said, because we know that people won't want to read this kind of book. We want to memorize them. But not in a way that people would say, this is a memory book, we don't want to read it. So we said people will look at on Google, and Yair and I also, I feel the same. Sometimes we worked on a story and we finished it, and we were with the hero with all our hearts, and then we saw how he looks like, or her, And it was so surprising. It's like I imagined it completely different.
Things
that was so helpful.
The map.
Is great.
Also, something really, interesting happened with the map, because the first edition, I didn't tell you something really important, but at the first edition, the map was completely wrong. Everything there, except from the places, they were correct. But the numbers, we have numbers of the injured and the kidnaps, and it was wrong because the media was not accurate at the beginning. And then we kept updating this, and you got it in English at the most updated version. So I'm just going to say something I think exciting, and then I'm going to read to you from the book. 2 weeks before the book went to print, Yair told me, listen, I want you to gather all the staff that was working on the book. It was a lot of people, and tell them that first he told me, I think this book is not going to go to second printing. We're just going to print 2,000 books, and that's it. It's not going to go to second print. People are not going to buy this book, and even if they're going to buy this book, they won't read it because they're not as strong as you. And I told him, why do you think so? And he said, I tell every friend of mine, I'm telling them what I'm doing, and they say, oh, it's so important. Kol hakavod. I don't think I'm going to read it. So I don't think people. And I heard it, and I say, you know what? I think you're right. And okay, but that's our mission, and we did it, and it's good that we did it. And this book will be on libraries, and if people would hear of it, then they will find it in a library or something. And I can tell you that today, this book he sold in Israel 50,000 copies, and in English another 20,000 copies, and we never expected this. It's an amazing thing, and I think it says something about Am Israel. I'm gonna read to you. Okay, I told you that I want to read to you a message from one of the heroes, but in order to get to this message, we have to go through 3 stories. Not all of them. We're just gonna read some parts of them. The common denominator of all those 3 stories is that all of them faced death. And, a lot of people almost everyone, every hero and heroine in the book thought at some point that they'll die because they're terrorists outside and you're in the shelter, and maybe they'll die. Sometimes they send messages to their families. But 5 of them, 5 in this book, and it happened it's arbitrary. I don't know why, it's by a chance. 5 heroes in this book. It's not just that they think maybe I'll die. It's they face such a situation that if I ask you, and I will, and you will answer me, and I think you'll agree with me. If you'll ask logic, what are the odds of these people to survive? The answer would be none. Okay? It's so certain that they are not gonna make it. Death is the absolute only option. 5 of them, 5 of this book, and they came and they did it, and they're here. It's a lot, in terms of percentage, 5 from 30 people. So you think about. So I'm gonna read not all 5 of them, only 3 of them. So at the end we could hear some of them's message. So the first story is the story of Or Ben Yehuda. Or Ben Yehuda, she's the battalion commander of Karakal. She's 35 years old. She has 3 little children, and she used to say that she's the mother of 543 children because this is how she feels about her soldiers. It's men and women soldiers, not only women. And when she was at the Egyptian border at the morning of October 7th, she was there because that's her job with her soldiers. And then she suddenly got a phone call from her friend. His name is Yonatan Tzor and Barnash, and he died that day. And they're friends from the army. And he called her and he said, "Oh, something happened. I don't know exactly what happened because they didn't know exactly what happened. But I can only tell you that I have soldiers in a Sufa outpost. I have soldiers there, and the outpost has been overrun. Now she tells us, okay, now from now on, I'm going to ask all of us now to try to actually kind of forget what we know about October 7th and just be in the present of the stories. Okay, she just knows that we have, because I think the present is that's where our decisions are made, in the present, okay, of what we know about the reality and about the future. And now we know that those 5 heroes, they are alive and everything is, even though half of the heroes in this book are not with us, but they are alive. I don't want you to know this, and I don't want you to know anything. She just knows that there are sirens. She heard sirens, and suddenly her friend is calling her, and he tells her that Hamutzav nichbash, the outpost had been overrun, and she said, first thing she said, okay, I'm on my way with. She took with her 12 soldiers, 18-year-olds, okay, men. And on her way there, she said that, first of all, she makes a lot of phone calls, and she starts to call for help, but she didn't know, we know that it didn't help. She thought it will help, but we know that it didn't really help. Only after a lot of hours. But also she says that through all this way there, she kept saying to herself out loud, the outpost had been overrun. She continues to say this. Why? Why is she saying it to herself? Why does she have to repeat it to herself?
We can't believe it.
What?
So she can be prepared.
Exactly. She knows that this is, she told us, this is a sentence that you can be in the army for your entire life and never hear it. And it's a good thing if you don't hear it. But then you hear it, and she says, I don't know what am I going to meet, to see. How does it look like, and how am I supposed to help with 12? She doesn't know, but she just goes there, and then she gets to the outpost, and she sees. She hears a lot of shooting. She sees, like, brings up drones, and she sees. They are, in Hebrew you say the word, they are shortzim. מחבלים שורצים בבסיס. I don't think in English you have this accurate word shortzim, like shratzim, like bugs. Crawling. I should say. So she says, like, they're everywhere, like tens of them, and there's no way she could do anything, like, in front of the terrace. But she sees some of the soldiers are wounded. And she gets to them at the entrance of the outpost, and she asks one of them what's going on. And he says the situation is like this: there are 30 soldiers in this outpost. All of them are now occupied in the dining room, and all the terrorists are shooting at them, throwing grenades into the dining room, but they don't let them in. They just fight back. That's the situation. So she says to herself, okay, I'm not going to be able to save them. If me and my soldiers are going to try fighting all those terrorists, we're going to probably end up. So she says, okay, so I just want to, like, freeze the situation so it won't escalate, so it won't get worse. And that's why she's doing this thing that I'm going to read to you now. At some point, I notice that there's a defensive earthwork, an embankment to my west, a huge one. And I say to myself, that would be a good position. The terrorists will be coming from there. It's the closest point to Gaza. I started heading there with my command team, my soldiers, my driver. We jump up, run, take cover, jump again, run, and take cover over and over until we reach the edge of the embankment. So I turn my head to the side and see a sight I will never forget as long as I live. I remember the situation so clearly. I peer, lift my head up, then bring my head back down, then look to the side again. Some 5 pickup trucks are coming at me, and packs of motorcyclists and terrorists are hopping between the dunes, between the trees, all in combat vests and uniforms and advancing in our direction. And now I can't even count them. They are hundreds. Hundreds. And in the distance behind them are a long line of people from Gaza who are just marching in our direction, some armed, some unarmed. And I say to myself, what is she saying to herself? Exactly. She says, well, that's it. By the way, the word "that's it" in this book in Hebrew is zeu. So she says, that's it. This is where I'm going to die, right here on this spot. I'm going to die here because she sees, I don't know, hundreds of terrorists. There are only 12. And she told me it was like maybe 200 meters from them and they're getting closer. So now I'm going to ask you, what are the chances that they would survive? It's no chance, okay? It's really, and now she says like this: I've been in many encounters and many firefights in my life, but it never felt like this. It never even came close to this. This time I accepted death. I came to terms with death. I understood that's how it is. I remember looking up and apologizing to my children. In my heart, I begged them to forgive me. They're so little and so cute, and I'd never come back to them, never see them again. That was it. I saw this was really the end. And then I said to myself, okay, if this is actually the end, then, and I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to come back to it, okay? I want to, she knows she's going to die, and then she says to herself, okay, if this is the end, then
gonna go out.
Yeah, that's something. What is she gonna do, and how is it gonna help her? And now I'm gonna tell you what she did. But when I spoke to her after the book came out, I met her, and I asked her, tell me something. When you did this, what you decided to do, did you know that this action is actually gonna save you and your soldiers? And she said, no way. I was sure that we're all going. I was like more than 100% sure that we're going to die. What I did was only for one reason. I wanted my soldiers to be she said they have the right to die as heroes. I wanted them to have the right death. Okay, so we're gonna read it in a minute. I'm gonna move forward to the next hero, which is called Miki. Miki.
We should guess what she did.
Yeah. You know what? This guessing game is really important because one of the points that the hero that will give us the message in the end is Miki. And one of the points that I think we should think about is, you know what? I don't want to spoil it. So I'll tell you in the end why this guessing game is really important. Because I think you won't be, because I think we won't be able to guess. I think our imagination is even more limited than the truth, than life, than reality. Okay, so the next hero is Miki. And Miki, he's the only hero in the book that doesn't have last name, and also we don't know I know how he looks like, but most of people don't know how he looks like because in his interviews he's always covered. And can you guess why? Why is he covered? Why do we? What? Because he's in special forces, and the terrorists, they knew it. At some point, he asked himself, why are they bothering so much for me? Maybe because they know me and maybe they have intel. And then at some point they told him, they gave him a hint that we know who you are and we need to kidnap you, especially. So his story begins with this very hard paragraph, but...
This was in Nachal Oz, right?
Yeah, in Nachal Oz, exactly. Miki is he lives in Nachal Oz, and he begins his story with this paragraph. Never in my whole life did I think that the idea of killing my wife and my daughter would ever cross my mind for even a fraction of a second. But there was a point there when the terrorists were at the door of the safe room, a point when we realized that this was it. You see, that's it. This was it. That's the word. My wife and I look at each other in total silence. When my daughter isn't, it's a 6-year-old daughter. My daughter isn't looking, and my wife makes this sign of 2 fingers walking like legs and shakes her head no. She's basically saying without words, we're not going with them. Then she points her fingers like a gun and points it at herself, then at our daughter, then at me. That's basically her way of telling me, if they come in, kill me, then Neda, then yourself. And I nod. And I put my hand over my heart, singling her. I'm sorry, forgive me. She singles that she's sorry too, and she smiles. A sad, sad smile. And this is really, really, really extreme, okay? And now I'm going to describe to you the situation, what made them decide, okay? This thing, and I think you will identify with them, maybe.
He killed her?
No.
No.
They were all saved.
But they were at that point.
That's what, yeah, they almost did it.
So it was in their mind.
Exactly. And I identified with your tears, because when I read this story, and the way he speaks about it now, okay, that's why he wants to tell us this message. So I'm going to
stop eating my fruit at that point.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you the situation, what made them got to this conclusion. The situation is that at the beginning, they're in the shelter room, they hear shootings outside, and then he realizes he hears screaming from other houses, and he hears trucks of terrorists, and then they start with megaphone saying, there is no Israel anymore. Come out. Whoever is not coming out is going to die. Something like that. And then he realized that his role is to keep his wife and daughter alive. And it means to keep them from getting into the shelter, to the safe room. So he took a gun and a lot of ammunition, but only one gun, okay? And he got out of the safe room. They closed the door, of course, and then he's in the living room. 1 second after he got to the living room with a gun, he hears the window breaks, the glass of the window breaks, and he sees terrorists come inside. He shoots at him. He falls. Then another one, he shoots at him too, and then the third, and he kills 3 of them. And then for a few minutes, silence, and then he hears the other window. Other terrorists come in, and then, like that, for 2.5 hours, terrorists are coming inside the house. Some of them, he's killing them at the window, but some of them, they bomb the door, and he's fighting them with only one gun when they have automatic weapon and grenades. And he said at the beginning, that's why he said at the beginning, they were fighting like soldiers. But then I heard them, some of them died, some of them got wounded, but he neutralized them. And they kept coming back, other people. And then he said to himself, why are they keeping, what's so important for them to come straight here? And he didn't know. And then he thought, okay, maybe they know something. And at some point, they threw 2 grenades at him. He didn't get hurt. One of them didn't explode. One of them did explode, but he didn't get hurt. He just fell on the floor. And in those 2 seconds when he is on the floor, he sees them running to the safe room. And he's here and they're there. And he's just, I don't know how he managed to get up and get into the safe room before them and close the door. And then they started to fight over the handle, thousands of people in that day. And they fight a lot of the handle, and they he says, I hear them they're so frustrated because they can't open the door, and they start shooting at him. It's a bullet that could go through the door, and it hurts. It wounds him a little, but he still holds the door, and they don't get in. And then they attach an explosive device to the door, and the door, he doesn't know it. It just knows that the door explodes. in a terrible explosion, and his wife and daughter scream at the... But he still holds the handle, okay? But now the door has this size of a hole. And he looks through the hole, and what he sees is the commander, the Imach Shmo of all the Nukhbat from Nachal Oz. He was their commander. After he told us that he was involved in a lot of kidnaps, and he's a very terrible person. He stands there. Behind him are a lot of terrorists. He aims RPG towards him, and he says, if you're not coming with us right now, I'm going to blow you up with your wife and daughter. That's where they decide this decision, okay? And while they decided, it's like, it's like someone wrote this story. Someone really, I don't know what to call him, because after they decided this, I don't know how to call him. This commander, after they decided, the commander starts counting backwards. Okay? And now he's got... Okay, now let's do the guessing game. We're not going to do it, but tell me, if you can even imagine, if you didn't read the story, but how did they do it? How did he manage to save the three of them? And it's not just like that. He did something and then another... At the end, they're alive. And this is, I really think that, and sometimes when I give this lecture to students, I tell them, okay, now I give you 10 minutes. You're the tasritaim, you're the one who writes the script. Give me the best scenario. They can't because our imagination, we should be humble. Our imagination is limited. Okay, so that's Mickey. Yeah. Maybe I'll tell you. Maybe because you should read it, but it's better to read or to watch, because if I just tell it, it's not going to be that amazing. I can give it to you if you want. I tell people, if you don't want to read this book, it's okay. I understand it's really not such an easy book, but you must read Mickey's stories. Go to Stimatsky, open the book, read Mickey's story, then close it, and because so really, if you want to, you can just stay for a little and read it, because I think. It's not good if I just tell it. You should read it. And it's yeah. They have it in every store, also in English. And it doesn't look really like that. This is the advanced copy. It looks better, even prettier. So yeah.
That's called an ARC. That's an advanced.
So now
copy, which is
the third hero. I'm not gonna read to you a lot of him. Just a small thing, because it's totally like if what we just read was unbelievable, then this story is... The first two heroes are men and women that faced death, almost died, but then lived. The third hero, his daughter died. And then after 30 days, she came back. Who is he and she? You know?
Yeah.
Emily. Thomas, I'll remind you, maybe you saw the video 5 days after October 7th. I remember this video because I was volunteering and adding subtitles to some website.
That whole story.
And this is a video that I saw, and it broke me to pieces. I couldn't function at all after I saw it. It's a man, actually kind of old, and he's crying, he's crushed, he's devastated, he's crying. He gives an interview to the Sky News, and he says in English, he says, "They told me she's dead." And I went, yes! You remember this video?
Yeah.
And why did he say yes? Because...
They would torture her.
Yeah, he said, if she was kidnapped, it's even worse.
Yeah.
And this video, I didn't know it, but then when we interviewed him, he said this video became viral around the world. And then he realized that he thinks his daughter is dead for a lot of days, okay? No, she came back after 49 days, actually. He thought she was dead for 30 days, I think. And he thinks she's dead. They were sitting Shiva. His children are Jewish. He's not Jewish. He's Catholic from Ireland. Not religious. But they were sitting Shiva. They told him, the army told them that she's dead. They have no body, but they don't have a body, but people recognize her for sure. And then he realized that he can do something for Israel and starts speaking around the world. And he is a really, really hero, and also his daughter. So both of them got interviewed for the book. And I just want to read to you the first paragraph, 2 paragraphs of his story, because when you saw this video and you saw the word "she's dead," and I remember it because I had to like add subtitles, and I remember that when he says she's dead, they had her picture. I saw her picture, and my computer program, from some, I don't know, mystic reason, decided to get stuck, and then it became like a loop of 2 minutes of she's dead, she's dead, she's dead. It was crazy, and how do I stop it? And then I finished it, and I sent the video, and I erased it from my computer because I never wanted to think of it again. She's dead, and we have nothing to do. But when we saw this movie, did any of us ever thought that maybe she's not dead? Maybe she's not. If someone told me that he thought of it, I would say, you're crazy, you're not rational. But actually, no. I mean, okay, so Thomas tells us this story. When Emily was 3, her mother, Liat, passed away from cancer. I went up to Emily and said to her, "Mommy's dead." And she said, okay, but she didn't really understand that meant Mommy would never come back. For a long, long time, she kept asking, "Where is Mommy? Where is Mommy?" She was only 3. After all, a tiny girl. She had no concept of death. So at one point, I took Emily to her mother's grave. I gave her a hug. I pointed to the grave and said to her, "Mommy's here. He's here in this little house. She will be here forever. She's not going anywhere. She doesn't feel anything anymore. She doesn't feel hot or cold. She doesn't feel anything at all." And Emily looked at me and I said to her, "Emily, sweetie, listen to me. Mommy is never coming back. She is dead. When someone is dead, they never come back." 5 years later, I found myself in a terrible tragedy once again. I was sure that my Emily had been murdered. For many long days, I mourned her death. But apparently, she never fully accepted what I had told her back there at Liat's graveside. After 2 months in Gaza, she came back to me. My beloved daughter came back to life. Okay? So when we pray about Tchiyat HaMetim, I never thought that in my life I would see it in my eyes. Like someone that his daughter, and I was also sure she's dead. I cried for a whole day about her. So now, we're gonna, as a close the thing, and I want to read you the end of Or's story, and then Miki's message, okay? So Or, you remember that she's standing on a embankment, and she sees the hundreds of turrets, and she says, okay, so she said, okay, that's it, I'm going to die. And she says goodbye to her children in her heart. And then she says, okay, if this is actually the end, then I'll end it well. I'll die standing tall. I'll do the very best I can, and I'll fight until my last drop of blood. You can hear it from her that she doesn't think she's going to live. She's sure she's going to die, but she's going to do it like. So I turned to my soldiers, a group of 12 brave soldiers, fighters, who are waiting for me to tell them what to do. I turned to them with a half smile. They told me afterward that I smiled, but I don't remember it. And I say to them, let's go, let's take them apart. And they all shout, let's do it. In Hebrew, they say, yalla, let's do it. They come to the embankment with heavy machine guns, with whatever they can carry. And we take our place there and start shooting at anyone approaching the outpost. We shoot like crazy people. And at a certain point, we have a light anti-tank missile. So at one point, we launch it toward one of the Hamas trucks. And the truck explodes. A tremendous explosion. Why? Exactly. Something extreme. The truck must have been loaded with explosives. And the blast takes within some motorcyclists who were nearby. And I suddenly realize that many of the terrorists are beginning to retreat, to turn around and run back. And I suddenly understand that we are, in fact, doing something significant here. By the way, she's so humble, this woman. I told her, you know, I also did something significant in my life. I was madricha in Bnei Akiva. I gave tzedakah, 18 shekels to someone. You saved the outpost. And then I used to say this to people, like in a lecture, that she and her soldiers saved the outpost. And then some commander told me, she didn't only save the outpost. This event is familiar. When they ran away, they dropped their maps. Wow. And we know that they had it really, really inside. And when I met her, I told her, is that true? And you know, she's so humble. So she said, yes, my brave soldiers saved the settlements inside Israel. So that's all. And now for Miki's message. So if you want to know how Miki saved you'll have to read it. But let's get to his message, which I think now we're in the position of getting something from it. So no. Okay. So every interviewee, we asked every one of them, after they told us the whole story, we asked them if we could just tell us something, some thoughts that you have, like introspective about this day. We didn't ask them for positive thoughts or for, just tell us what you think. So by the way, all of them spoke about achdut, that we need achdut, unity. How do we call it in English? Unity. And it was amazing. We didn't bring it in because all of them spoke about it. So only 2 of them got it inside the book. But when Miki was asked this question, he says, I don't feel like a hero. It's hard for me. My friends, my closest neighbors, they were killed. Some of them were taken hostages. And all I did was protect my family. If only I could have done more. Not a day goes by without thinking about my friends from the kibbutz who were taken hostage. I'm sitting here with my wife and 2 daughters, and my friends are hostages alone, separated from their wives, from their children. It's hard. Sometimes I can't even eat, knowing that they might not have anything to eat or drink. My family is in Nachal Oz. Many of the households didn't even have gun to defend themselves with. We were lucky. Or maybe it was destiny. My wife isn't usually a believer, but even she says that maybe there was someone watching over us. But what about all those people who didn't have that happy ending? It's hard, very hard. Okay, that's the beginning of what he says. And then he says this. This is the message. But there's something else in the whole story that gives me strength. There's that expression, I stared death in the face. Me, I didn't just stare death in the face. I embraced it. I made my peace with it. I even thought of helping it along. What would have happened if my wife and I had given up? If after they blew up the door to our safe room, we had just given up? To tell you the truth, it terrifies me. It terrifies me to think about it. I was certain that we weren't going to make it. I was certain of it. A few times I was convinced of that, absolutely certain. But somehow I got through the whole story, and my family is still alive. And today I can say with absolute certainty, En Yeush Ba'olam. There is no despair in the world. That's a very strong feeling of mine. There is no despair. There is no such thing as giving up. Even when you see the end, even when you're sure that it's over, don't give up. Never, ever, ever give up. So when you know this En Yeush Ba'olam, right? Some people I know, I was like raised over this sentence. En Yeush, no Lityaesh, there's no despair in the world. And usually I didn't like this message at all because it seemed like an irrational message, like an irresponsible message.
What about
as
Mitzada?
If what? Yeah, Mitzada is like right, but he says that sometimes I'll just say about the despair. I thought that this never despair thing is not fair and not even, I don't know, moral, because sometimes you have to give up. If I have a business that keeps losing money for 6 months already, then I don't want me to say, okay, no yeush, I shouldn't despair, everything is going to be right. This is so irresponsible. So I hated this message, actually. But now when I read Mickey, I realized that this is exactly the opposite. If someone decides to shut down his business after 6 months of losing money, this is the exact opposite of despair. Because what? Because
making a decision.
He's making a decision, and he says there is a better future for me, and I'm going to do something to get there. I'm going to stop doing something that is wrong for me, and I believe that the future can be better if I do something different. This is the opposite of despair. Despair is treating that what Mickey taught me. Despair is treating the end as if it has already happened. And it's like, if you want to imagine this, it's like if I were standing on in front of a train that's coming towards me, and I would say, okay, so there's gonna be a run over here, so I'm not gonna run away because it's already happened. So I'm just giving up and not choosing, not doing anything, not for myself. So from when I realized it, I understood that there's no such thing as despair. It's not just you shouldn't despair, it shouldn't give up. It's also like when Reb Nachman says it, there's no such thing as despair, because despair is really not a thing. It's an illusion, it's a lie. We can never know we can never know the future. That's why I said that the guessing game is important, because if you even try to guess the future, in some cases, really 5 of the stories here, you won't be able to guess. Really. If you will buy this book or read this book, I'll tell you the names. You should read this story through these perspective and think, can I tell what's gonna happen? How is gonna live at the end? No, you won't be able, because it's life are stronger than us. So I know that we have in Israel a lot of because lately we have a lot of reasons to fall into despair. Good reasons, rational reasons, like the reasons they had. And they're heroes. There's this sentence in Hebrew, "Bemotam tzivu lanu et hachaim." How would you say it in English? In their death,
they
commanded us to live. So I think that there are some people that in their life they commanded us, because he's living today. He commands us not to despair. And once I told it to a group of people, even a small group like us, and a woman raised her hand and she said, I'm from those. I told there are 2 kinds of people in the world. One of them are people who faced death, absolute death, and came back at the other side, and they know something that we don't know. They know that the end is not always the end. And there are people like me and you that don't know it. That wasn't there. And then one woman raised her hand and she said, I'm from the first group. And I told her, okay, what happened? So she says, today is this month will be 10 years for the letter I got from the Kupat Cholim, that told me that they're not going to fund my Ashtalat meach etzem. How do I say it in English?
Bone marrow
transplant. Because I will 100% won't survive. Okay? And she didn't say it to laugh about the Kupat Cholim, but to laugh about life. Life can be very, very surprising. And if we know that, it makes us humble, right? Because we don't really know anything. And then I told this, and then someone else told me that he was, for a month and a half, he was in a coma because of Corona. And his family came to say goodbye to him a few times, and then he woke up. And he had to start learning from the beginning to eat and to walk, but he's fine. And so this is really, really happening around us all the time. So that's the message, and thank you for the presents. Thank you so much for listening for a long, long time. This was really long, so thank you so much.
The only thing is